you likely teach us how to use it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't have a lot to say because it's basically the same as all the other scripts we run. There's just one snag I came across that can screws up the code a little bit, but it doesn't change it. It's a simple fix. So these are the location of the scripts I'm going to be talking about today. So I guess I went a little ahead. So the only ones I'm going to talk about are the ones that have SOC in them. But yeah, they're on the photon, and they're in the bin, and they're spinner dynamics, the MATLAB codes. And so I guess today I'll just be talking about how to generate green figures, but it's basically the same protocol, just making this blue figures. So you have to do all the same steps that we did before. You have to get your RRR file from the couplings that you compute using spin-orbit couplings, or the spin-orbit interaction. And then you need a certain version of the code, so the MATLAB code, and then the other usual input files, like energy pot and input overlap. And so you just have to input the same usual parameters, so your initial conditions, some things about your cell size for your atomistic model, what orbitals you care about. So you have to do all those things. And then usual run the code, and then it'll spit figures at you. And it took me a while because normally like the axis is longer, and this propagates. You usually assume it fully propagates. But after a while, I noticed that if I extended the time of my dynamics, this time wouldn't change at all. And apparently, for the systems I deal with, the HOMO and minimal bands are both degenerate, and then it runs into some sort of numerical instability, because it will basically reach a steady state at some point, and then the wave function will be corrupted, and it will just give you a bunch of NAs instead of numbers.
And what's the reason for that?
I don't know.
But you guess.
Some sort of instability of, I don't know why, because the rates, because it has the rates and it's just going detailed balance.
But
from one state to another.
Maybe, if not the complete answer, but at least the practical feeling in which situation this numerical instability happens, and without much of deep analysis, any practical hints to avoid it. I know right now you will show how to hide it under the rug, because basically nothing practical happens. It's already on the wall. Mm-hmm. But how to avoid formation of this not a number values?
If you just have like, I don't know, maybe a 0.05 EV difference between like your HOMO and HOMO -1. Because for mine, it's like maybe less than a milli EV. Or it's probably, well, maybe not less than a milli EV, but it's like a milli EVs.
Degeneracy.
Yeah.
Is by the guy.
Right.
You're dividing by 0, right?
But one of us was running into and successfully resolving this issue. Will you share your...
Did you try to modify the triple R file? Like, how many coupling files do you use for generating the triple R file?
How many couplings do I use? Like a couple hundred.
Consider to decrease a little bit, like use 100?
I've tried doing like 20, 50, generating RR files with different amount of couplings or different amount of noise in them, essentially. And yeah, they didn't really have an impact.
But in your situation, what's your observation?
At least for the green figure. So if you use long trajectory, you are very likely to get the noise, numerical instability. As if you reduce the duration of the trajectory, then you can remove the numerical instability.
So we started today with talk by David, who did show how to convert long trajectory into a set of constant coefficients, right? So it was a way to remove noise. And the longer trajectory, the better is the way the noise is removed. But in case what Errol is showing, sometimes absence of noise has adverse numerical effect. So a little bit of noise helps diagonalizing matrices, some random values here in the numerical. And it's a practical hint, making an average or shorter trajectory in some cases can remove this not a number. And this is interesting phenomena that we all can investigate. So it's not computational chemistry or physics; it's more applied math problem. But it's an interesting phenomenon. How convergence of matrices and importance of having random values across the matrix.
And yeah, I tried a bunch of different things, changing time steps, changing time of integration, or the time of propagation. Nothing really changed, so I guess since we know we already relaxed at the band edge, and we're already like 10 picoseconds, going on 100 picoseconds past going to equilibrium, like just a cheap solution is just called frozen propagation. So basically you just find where your wave function's calculated, and then you just tell it to keep looping through and keep that value before it gets to the point where it reaches the instability. So like in the previous picture, like you would just rerun the simulation, but you would tell it once it hits this value, just propagate it forward from there.
So just project last legitimate value to all other subsequent timestamps.
And it's mostly just to make the figure look better, because I deal with radiative systems and their lifetimes are on the scale of a nanosecond. So you usually want your figures to correspond with the time scales that you're doing. And so, yeah, that's why I had to figure that out so I could get this propagate to about a nanosecond.
Is there any difference in relaxation time when you're using the frozen propagation?
Well, I guess if you change the time steps, if you should reach like a convergence point in general. I guess switching from like the scales I was going from, so I was like, for these I usually do 2,000 time steps. And so switching from like 1,000 to 2,000 didn't really change it. But I guess if I went to like 500, I would probably start to change the cooling times. And that's for generating green figures. And I guess I started doing ways to generate visualization figures.
Oh, and you want to give credit to Landon.
Yeah, I might let him do that because he knows the scripts better than I do, how to explain them. Because I don't quite understand.
Been a while.
But, yeah, please keep going, but we can return back to observables with more focus next week.
Okay. Well, I guess. So we need a lot. So for these, so basically this image right here is part of a movie. It's a big snapshot of a movie. But so all these dots and figures are from the atomistic model. So you have to generate the position file. So we have to get that and extract those out. Then these ISO surfaces are the orbitals. And so to generate these, we need par charges in your orbital window from your input overlap. And then we process those so we can make figures like these. And so to get the orbitals, you need your par charge files. There's a script that Landon developed. Or I guess he started the development of it, and then Dmitry took it and applied it to par charges. And you just have to format the files a little bit so that MATLAB reads them correctly. And so that's just for generating what we call band out 2D. So that's just projecting the orbitals onto 2 dimensions. And then to generate the figures, you need the band out 2D that we made, and then RRR, energy pop, input overlap, like the usual dynamics. And then there's a special version of the code listed here, which is in the bin. And it's basically all the same code that we've gone over before with an extra 100 or 200 lines. And then to get your stick figures, you have to modify the postcard a little bit. And so, to generate your band out 2D, you first have to make par charge files. I didn't go over that. I don't know if someone already did. You probably learned at some point how to generate par charges for your model. And so, if you need questions with that, or if you need help with that, you can ask questions from someone. So you generate all your par charges, and then you have to trim them. We're basically removing like 100 or 200 or whatever lines, so that it's easier for MATLAB to read the code in. And so this is a script that's also in that bin, which basically just it loops through all the orbitals. So that's what these numbers count for. So it loops through your orbitals, and it just removes this many lines from the top of the par charge file. And here's some examples of what the file should look like before and after. So this is what the par charge looks like to begin with. So basically it's like your postcard file at the top of it. And then you delete, in my case, about 1,000 lines. And then you get it to this point. So where it lists the grid points for the par charge and then all the orbital data. So in general, I guess it would be however many atoms you have in your system plus 9. That's what the white box number should be here. So you make all your par charge files, and then you go to MATLAB and you open up the trim parch2x.m. And so to begin with, this is the part that Landon wrote. It basically just reads in the dimensions of the file. And so blockpot is just a dummy name, so you just copy one of your par charges to blockpot.trim so that it reads into the dimensions.
So this specific part of code is major insight that no one was able to do before Landon.
Mm-hmm.
It's a big challenge to read this specific output of computational chemistry codes. So it's very appreciated that you do it.
And then, like usual, you have some parameters for the orbitals that you have to input. And then after that, it's basically just hit run and hope it keeps saying I'm alive. And then yeah, after that, it'll just generate your band out 2D. And it'll save that into your directory, or yeah, whatever folder you're in. And so that gives you your orbitals for your dynamics, and then if you want to be visually pleasing, you want your atoms to be with your orbitals. And so to load that into MATLAB is, it's kind of tricky, but Dimitri, I guess, during ESP last year, just took an afternoon and figured out how to do it.
It's not a silly activity because everyone who writes new drawing and visualization computational chemistry codes does it, so it was not elegant repetition of standard things.
So essentially the way that it works in MATLAB, what you do is you get your postcard.xyz, and then you basically copy that into all the chemical elements you have in your model. And so I only listed one here, so you copy your postcard to, like if you have carbon, so you go with CXYZ. Then you would do the same thing if you had hydrogen, you would do another version of hydrogen.xyz, and so on. So for all the chemical elements you want to visualize, and then you remove the first column from each of your files. And then the first column is usually just the, actually I gotta back up one step. So after you copy your postcard into C.xyz, you want to delete all the other elements. So if you have carbon, so if you want to isolate carbon, you basically just open up your C.xyz and just delete everything else that's not carbon. or all the lines. So you just have carbons in there, and then you would remove the first column from that file. And then in this case, we usually name the updated files carbon1.xyz, or you can name it whatever, but I think in the MATLAB code it reads that in. And so the visualization code is basically the same as everything else before, so you have to put in your usual parameters. And then you get to around line 300, and then you start getting into where it reads band out data, so you have to manually enter the dimensions. So those are the three numbers that were on top of the par charge files, which lists the grid points. And below that, that's the code that visualizes the atomic coordinates. And so this would be the carbon atoms would just load in your C1, and then for all the other chemical elements, you just load in XYZs. And from there, basically just, if you want to draw bonds between your chemical elements, you can make vectors between them. So, I don't know, there's probably like 20 lines of code in each one of these, but basically just gives distances between each of the atoms, and then within a certain tolerance, it just makes a vector of a certain color. And for mine, it's pretty straightforward, because I'm just dealing with my perovskite nanocube, or quantum dot all the time, so I don't have to change this. But if you were doing your own model, you'd have to change these a little bit. And you basically just have to change the names of the chemical elements to whatever your model is. So they correspond. So that gives you bond distances, and then a little bit below that, that's where it starts saving the video for the file. That's where the code kind of starts to lose me. But there's two inputs you have to put in, so your number of conduction bands and number of valence band states. If you don't change those, oh yeah, they correspond to your band out. So yeah, if you put in the wrong numbers there, you'd have like the wrong HOMO for your dynamics figure. And then, yeah, from there is click run, and apparently it's a heavy-duty calculation to do, because I think on my Mac laptop, like, it just starts heating up right away afterwards, and it has to sit there for 10 hours to do the whole trajectory. So it's best practice would be to find a desktop that you don't really care about and let it run on that overnight. And I think that's it.
Okay, let's thank Aaron. You didn't include the movie that comes out of this calculation.
I didn't. I couldn't find one on my desktop. I couldn't find your YouTube page for some reason. Well, I found one of your YouTube pages. I couldn't find the other YouTube page.
Well, maybe we will just enjoy the movie next time.
Yeah,
we'll
it'll
find
come
it
out.
together. Any questions to Aaron? The last part of his talk was not mandatory. It's a little exhausting and special effort for visualization. But the first part was something which happened.